Welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. Well, following up on my special edition regarding the Iranian situation, I want to give you more of an update. As you should know, Iran has been a major headache and threat to the world, the whole world, for 47 years. That kind of indolence is what caused the world wars. That is, indolence on the side of the good guys just sitting back and doing nothing. Well, we finally have a courageous and common sense president in Trump, who, along with Israel, launched a timely attack on Iran, which 6 other presidents were too cowardly to do. I want to do a quick drive-by to identify America's domestic enemies. I want to identify the traitors within our government. I want to identify those who allow tyrants to thrive only to force us into war later, costing thousands of American military lives. Folks, these domestic enemies aren't just making dumb mistakes, and it's not just a matter of a difference of opinion. It's intentional, and they are as deadly, if not more so, than the Iranian leadership we just took out. First of all, we have Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, who said, "Nobody in this country is asking for a war with Iran." Well, let me remind everybody that in the recent talks that Trump had with Iranian officials, it was revealed by the Iranians that they had enough nuclear fissile material to create 11 bombs. Guess what? Mr. Murphy knew this, and yet he's deceiving his voters and the rest of the nation that the current conflict in Iran was totally optional and gratuitous by Trump. Then Mr. Murphy further stated that just like months ago, no one in this country was asking for a war with Venezuela. This is further proof that Mr. Murphy must be removed from office as quickly as possible, because Maduro of Venezuela was not only spreading communism, it was supporting Cuba. But more importantly, he had already been indicted in New York as one of the biggest fentanyl drug kingpins in the world, causing tens of thousands of deaths in this country from that drug. Shame on you, Mr. Murphy. Also, note how Murphy refers to them as wars. That too is deceiving and intentional. So to my listeners up in Connecticut, you must rise up and get rid of this dishonest, pathological liar who is placing you, your family, and the country at risk, all for the sake of him trying to remain relevant and in power. Murphy is one of the worst in the Senate, and based upon all of his previous prevarications where he has deceived and marketed his lies across the country, his actions are treasonous, fraudulent, and an ever-present danger to this country. When Murphy next accused the president of intentionally tanking our economy, think about that. How absurd is that? Is anyone calling him to task on that and to prove it? Of course not. He needs to be confronted and held accountable. Mr. Murphy, under President Biden, voted for the legislation and supported policies that caused the highest inflation in 40 years and the resulting increase in prices that we are still struggling with. Murphy is one of the most dishonest people I've ever seen on the national stage, and those in his state need to rise up in outrage over the daily lies that he tells. For him to say this about Trump and the economy when every indicator shows that the economy is at one of its strongest points should be actionable against this man. He cannot prove a thing that he says. Furthermore, he was complicit with Biden in ruining the economy, and as everyone should know, when inflation goes up as high as it did, prices follow. But here, and you've got to get this straight, Mr. and Mrs. America, when inflation comes down, prices don't follow. This is the kind of harm that Murphy and Biden caused this country. And now you want Trump to wave a magic wand and you're calling for affordability? Then Senator Murphy accused Trump as being the most corrupt president in the history of our nation. How about some facts, Mr. Murphy? You're one of the most corrupt people I've seen, particularly in the Senate. Murphy needs to be cross-examined. He would wither as a cut flower in the sun. He is absurdly reckless in his comments. Then we have Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, who said the American public is bewildered as to why President Donald Trump is conducting military strikes on Iran. Well, thank the Lord that 80-year-old Durbin is retiring. He has been one of the Democrat radical leftists from Illinois in the Senate. He practiced deception his whole time in the Senate. And it has never been to our nation's benefit. Durbin knows exactly what the purpose is for bombing Iran, from closed-door classified hearings. Durbin knows the amount of nuclear material that the Iranians had available to fit on top of one of their thousands of missiles. We are now seeing how many missiles Iran has as they are attacking all of their neighbors in the Middle East. Again, he's another Democrat pathological liar. He also has turned a blind eye to China's involvement, getting oil at a discount from Iran. You see, we've got all these bad actors on the stage that's ready to cause chaos in the world, and we're so stupid and so asleep, and we don't hold these radicals and these traitors, as I call them, in the Democrat left, accountable. The relationship between China and Iran was a very dangerous one, where China could use Iran as a nuclear proxy. Imagine that. Folks, wake up. The radical Democrat left kept you in the dark, and they hate America. Listen to them. Do you ever hear them praise it? They are a clear and present danger to your life, liberty, and happiness. Then we have Senator Gallego of New Mexico, who is as deadly to the truth as are the rattlesnakes in the state he comes from and represents. Just recently, Gallego said about Trump and his administration that these idiots are just willing to sacrifice U.S. men and U.S. women without any real thought about what they're doing and what the consequences are going to bring these families. What a fool to say something like that, given the tactical planning and successful execution of the plan. He knows he is lying, and those remarks are absolutely untrue. He had intelligence briefings revealing the facts and basis for the need to attack Iran. The issue with Iran's missile program has now been proven, as Iran is attacking all the nations around it with missiles. Gallegos is the very type of man that needs to either be institutionalized or incarcerated because of the fraud and the practices he has foisted upon the country. Gallego, just like the other Democrats and the left, they plant dangerous seeds of misinformation that will eventually germinate in the minds of simple-minded people that will only bring harm to America. When Americans believe in and act on those lies, the whole of the nation suffers, and in this dangerous nuclear world, there are no do-overs. I've listened to this senator for some time now and have yet to hear him speak any truth. So how does he get by with it? He is never challenged, and my listeners out in New Mexico could do that if they started gathering at his offices and making calls and writing letters to the papers. Now, let's not leave out Republicans and the Republican token Democrat Thomas Massie in Kentucky. After all, he sides with the Democrats on major items confronting the president, just like Adam Kinzinger did and Liz Cheney did, and their voters kicked them out of office. Kentucky voters need to do the same with Massie. The very man that his constituents voted for by over 60% opposes the president and his constituents' choice all the time. To my listeners in Kentucky's 4th Congressional District, it's time for you to get in touch with reality and stop worshiping a man that is anything but what you think he is. He is not a brave and courageous man holding up any principle of constitutionality. He is a sanctimonious, obscene, utopian, libertarian deceiving his constituents, or at least those who don't read beyond the headlines. It is the uninformed that somehow think Massie is principled in a way that will save the country. It's quite the contrary, folks. What Massie is doing is placing the country in grave danger, and all one need do is to take a look at how he often sides with the Democrat left, who adore him. With the exception of a few Democrats, they all oppose Trump's efforts to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran, who have already vowed numerous times that they would use those weapons to destroy America. How foolish is it not to believe that? As I said in my special edition just recently on the Iranian situation, we lost so many opportunities in the past to prevent great wars. We could have prevented Russia from becoming communist, as well as China. We could have prevented Cuba from being taken over by Castro, and the same with Venezuela. Hitler could have been prevented as well. And as a result, hundreds of millions of lives have been lost and placed in bondage because we did nothing, just like the Democrats want us to do with Iran. So now it is incumbent upon you to do something. And it's simple by picking up the phone or writing a letter and letting your Democrat representatives and even your Republican representatives that if they don't get behind Trump in his attempt to protect this country from a nuclear Iran, that come the next election, you will be working for their defeat. Now, on to some other news. Oh, what sweet justice it is that Mamdani is raising property taxes in New York City to push New Yorkers into communal housing. Oh, communal, that's a communist term. So much for the American dream of home ownership. It has been reported that Mamdani wants to absorb the properties as people default or cannot afford a home. That's going to be the mandate. The mandate is going to create more communal housing once people can't afford it anymore to be in a house, to buy a house. That is the communist way. Folks, stupidity is expensive. Here's an example of how easy it is to manipulate the populace. By now, everyone has seen the tremendous media exposure and coverage of the United Kingdom's arrest of Prince Andrew. However, the bigger story is, why is the media and the government ignoring migrant rapes? The tremendous numbers of sexual crimes are committed by the left in the Labour Party in England, and yet they turn a blind eye to it because it does not help their agenda of turning England into a Muslim state. Now, some ask, well, why would they want to do that? And the answer is clear. The Labour Party is a communist institution, and communism and Islam get along quite well, folks. Just look at New York's mayor, Zohran Mamdani, who is both a Muslim and a communist. Yes, the Marxist magicians are at work. Mamdani is performing his magic with the media. And the Democrat left by focusing your outrage on a dead man, that is, Jeffrey Epstein, who committed the same types of crimes against young underage women. So why do they focus on that is, the Epstein matters, and not the greater numbers of offenses being created by illegals? Because that is a useful tool to keep attention away from what they don't want to talk about, which is how the Islamic cultures are destroying European countries by intentionally opening the borders, as the U.S. did under Biden. What justice is being served by pursuing a dead man and a handful of perverts that used his services when the greater crimes and nation destroyers are being ignored? People are so easily fooled, and they ultimately pay the price through great suffering and injustice. Now, you have all heard me talk before about Kentucky's 3rd Congressional District, Representative McGarvey. In one of my recent podcasts, I showed you a picture of him pretending to be just normal and like everybody else, wearing a little baseball cap and a flannel shirt and talking in hushed tones to impress you with his folksy attitude. Well, folks, he's anything but. He fits in with the other deranged Democrat leftists. He's a small, peevish little man who decided not to go to the State of the Union and represent his district when Trump gave the State of the Union speech. I will continue to say this till the day that I die, that the left and the liberals are truly a psychological catastrophe needing treatment, if not institutionalization. So for those in Louisville, Kentucky who voted for this creepy McGarvey, and you need to watch him, he is creepy, you should be ashamed and motivated to rid yourself of this man-child, McGarvey. Now, in the incredible State of the Union address by Donald Trump, Trump asked those in attendance to stand if they agreed that the first duty of the American government is to protect the American citizens and not the illegal aliens.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself.
No Democrat stood. Trump paused. In understanding the significance of the moment heading into the midterms, he just looked over at the Democrat side and was just for a moment paused and just stared at them and looked at them, giving them an opportunity to stand, and said, and looked at him and said, "You can't even stand for that? You can't even stand for the proposition that you are here to protect the American people? These are crazy people." That's what he said. And they are crazy people, folks. Folks, that tells you everything you need to know about the mentality and the character of the brokenness of what makes up the Democrat left. How much more evidence and facts do you need to be put before you as to the evil and the wickedness of the Democrat left? They refuse to stand and say their job is to protect the American citizens. That is about as atrocious and blatant as I have ever seen. This should be a party killer. This should, in a sane country, end that Democrat Party. After Trump's State of the Union speech, the public loved it. Trump even won over CNN viewers. Imagine that, contradicting the network's own Abby Phillips' post-speech grading. Pre-speech, 54% of the watchers said that Trump was moving the country in the right direction and to their liking. A CNN instant poll taken immediately after the speech revealed that some 64% of those polled affirmed Trump's moving the country in the right direction. That's a 10-point bump. CNN's own Abby Phillips, who sneered at the president, she called Trump and said this about Trump. She said, "Trump's bestowing the Presidential Medals of Freedom, 2 Medals of Honor, 2 Purple Hearts, and the Legion of Merit was a game show type moment that he had to do because his other messages are a hard pill for Americans to swallow. No, Abby, you have a hard time dealing with the truth and decency and honesty." Trump's address to the nation was filled with some of the most wonderful moments honoring people who had suffered greatly, and mostly because the Democrat leftists, via their policies, had placed our country in danger, and those being honored paid the price that Trump was honoring. Now, as you can tell in my writings and podcasts, I built a compelling and overwhelming case as to the vile character of the Democrat left. Going back about a week on Thursday's MS Now's The Last Word, Senator Adam Schiff of California said President Donald Trump was building an immigration and customs enforcement, that's ICE, into an army that's going to be policing American streets. Now, don't forget what I have said in the past, that the left are projectionist, and that if you want to know what the Democrats are planning and who they really are, just listen to the names they call you and the things they accuse you of. So how do you analyze what Schiff is saying? Well, first, remember he was censored by Congress for lying about Trump's fake communication to Russia. Furthermore, Schiff is under investigation and should have been indicted for that fake Russia hoax. Also, Schiff is under investigation for mortgage fraud. And third, which should be your first filter, as with the rest of the Democrat left, he is projecting upon others what he and the Democrats did with their open borders policy under Biden. They were going to create a solid voting bloc in this country to keep them in power forever. They always accuse others for what they are doing and planning. So Schiff was trying to throw you off their trail by accusing Trump of using ICE as a private army. That's exactly what the Democrats were planning. Never forget that. Here's another one for you. A pro-abortion University of Notre Dame professor has turned down a prestigious leadership appointment after facing major backlash from the pro-life movement and more than a dozen U.S. bishops. So now your question should be, why, in all places like Notre Dame, a Catholic university, is there a pro-abortion professor? This question needs to be asked of all those ultimately in charge of the affairs of the university and universities around the country. This worldview will taint and affect everything else this professor does, including how he interprets what he teaches. He is a wolf among the sheep. Moreover, why would he even be considered for even further advancement? So what should be done if you're Catholic? Who should be expressing your outrage at those at Notre Dame? Now, I'm not Catholic, but I have a lot of Catholic friends, and I have one Catholic friend, in fact, giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to Notre Dame on a regular basis, and she is going to get a call from me, and I'm going to update her as to what they are not doing right at Notre Dame. And I have a feeling that's going to dent the donations. You see, the best way to deal with the enemy is to cut off their money and their money supply. Okay, here's one more observation. The Democrats are weighing how to target corporations that have courted Donald Trump if the Democrats retake the House after the midterm elections. Here's three of the America's top Democrat leftist enemies: Jamie Raskin, Chris Murphy, who I've talked about earlier, and Pramila Jayapal. These are all enemies of this country, folks. It's undebatable, and the empirical evidence is there. Every position they take is to weaken this country. They spread misinformation and have aided and abetted, turning a blind eye to the fraud of the millions and billions of tax dollars that they've used to buy votes. We saw that in Minneapolis and Minnesota. It's time we start a regime change of Democrats in this country. Well, that's it for today. The news cycle over the last month has been very active and a lot to give attention to. So with that, until next time, I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.